Well, this is a good way to come back for my channel. As you already can tell by the title, I recently watched the new Michael Moore documentary, Fahrenheit 11/9, which is a play on his most famous documentary, or one of them, Fahrenheit 9/11. And from what the trailers made it out to be, it was supposed to be about how Trump is evil and all the stuff that Michael Moore has talked about in a lot of interviews recently, even his Broadway play. And after watching it, the Trump stuff only makes up like 5% of the movie, which is actually surprising. Which I was trying to break down this film. The Trump stuff only takes about like 15%, maybe even less, because it's 15% about that. It's 70% about the Flint Water Crisis, which, if you don't know, Michael Moore's from Michigan. 5% about the new faces of the Democratic Party, and 5% about the Parkland shooting and March for Our Lives, which, I mean, it's fine to talk about this, but when your selling point that it's Trump is evil, that's when it comes to play. And it's just baffling because in it, there's a really good Flint documentary. It's just surrounded by a bunch of hooey involving Michael Moore's hatred for Trump, which is really nothing new. It's actually kind of boring when he's talking about the other stuff because it's all the talking points that we know already for the hatred of Trump, for gun control, which, like, again, the two most interesting parts about this documentary, to say something nice about it, because there's really nothing to talk about in this movie, is it's 7% about the Flint Water Crisis, which is actually really interesting because you actually get to talk about the Flint Water Crisis, hear from the people, and hear what they thought about when Obama came into Flint to discuss the water crisis in 2016. It was really interesting. But it's jump cut by, oh, this leads to this. Oh, this leads to Trump, how he's evil. Or this leads to the Parkland shooting, which comes out of nowhere. And this is doing nothing new, but... And one thing that really just pisses me off about the media and this movie in general is they showed footage from the shooting, from the students, which, yeah, you have to get your point across, but it comes out of nowhere, and it's very uncomfortable, especially for a documentary like this. I know that there's a point to it, but it's just really unnecessary when you could have just used newsreel footage. It's just nothing like we haven't seen before. We've seen this before. And my question is to people, it's like, what's the appeal of Michael Moore? Like, yeah, I will admit I did like Bowling for Columbine, but looking back on it, I really don't remember it. I remember a bunch of documentaries that stick out, like the Fire Festival documentaries, or political documentaries like Dirty Money, Get Me Roger Stone, or even the Trump docuseries on Netflix. I remember those more than I remember anything in this movie, besides the Flint stuff, because the Flint stuff is so interesting, and I hate going back to it and going back to it again. But again, it's just so interesting to see the Flint stuff rather than all the other points we do. And at the beginning of the film, something that stuck out to me when I was taking these notes is that Michael Moore makes this theory that Gwen Stefani is to blame because apparently NBC paid her more than Trump for The Voice. And Trump was like, you know what? Let's just make this a skit. I'll say I'm running for president, say some outlandish stuff. And they fired him, which, okay, you don't really have any proof. And to compare him, it's like he's the Dinesh D'Souza of the Democratic Party. Like, both are bad for the parties that they represent. Dinesh D'Souza just making wild claims that either A, people know about, or B, have been disproven. And you got Michael Moore, who is, again, saying stuff we already know, and again, making wild claims, like the Gwen Stefani thing. And it's so weird that this documentary has a lot of things in common with Dinesh's documentary, Hillary's America, and man, it's so disappointing because when I watched Bowling for Columbine for the first time, I was like, this guy's a really talented filmmaker, really talented documentarian, and now he's just saying stuff we already know, that people hate Trump. Say something we don't know. Say something that, or do something wildly outlandish, like in Hillary's America, when the screening of Birth of a Nation, a Klansman just pops out of nowhere, out of the screen, and Woodrow Wilson runs out of the lawn, runs out to the Rose Garden in amazement. Just watch that scene on YouTube. It's bafflingly hilarious. And again, like, that's what I remember about this documentary. That documentary, more than this documentary. Like, I used to go on and on about this, but again, I have to say, why was this movie even made if we already know this? Why was this documentary even made when there was a really good documentary about Flint, where you know Michael Moore had a bunch of passion for? That Michael Moore, despite his hatred of Trump and almost everything the Republican Party stands for, why did he not just focus on the Flint crisis? Was it because, oh, he just needed the play on word for his title? It's honestly one of the messiest movies I've seen in 2018, and I saw this 21 days after the movie premiered. Guys, this is, if I were to make the worst list of the year, this would outplace Sorry to Bother You. Like, at least Sorry to Bother You was ambitious and was focused. This movie isn't. It really isn't focused, and it lies to get people in the seat when it should have been about Flint. And it also doesn't help that during the premiere of Fahrenheit 11/9, still stupid title anyways, that Michael Moore was being called out for being a huge scumbag for stiffing a Boston company helping his film festival. Leonard Maltin and his daughter called him out, and I saw a lot of, at the time when I had my Twitter, deleted tweets saying that this film was riveting. And people apologizing for saying, oh, I didn't know this was happening. And we haven't heard anything from Michael Moore on this because, you know, God forbid Michael Moore be accountable for something. Man. And I linked down below the articles which I did provide sources, which, weirdly enough, Michael Moore really doesn't, which, I mean, I don't expect it, but when it's a documentary about certain things, yeah, I expect to see a lot of CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, CNBC, Fox Business for news clippings, which he does. But he really doesn't provide a lot of, like, actual news sources. Like, The Times, The Hill, which, again, recent documentaries about controversial things have done before. It's really not that difficult to do. I don't understand why he does it. I think he's just doing it just for shock value. Just, I don't know. This movie wasn't good. It really wasn't. I don't understand why it's getting all this praise. It's a messy film, and it completely lies to its audience. If you liked it, that's fine. Someone who's really in the middle about everything, this really didn't win me over. I know all the points. It should have been about Flint. Why wasn't it about Flint? Like, this is a passion for Michael Moore, but why didn't he talk about it? If this was an episode that wasn't that bad, I would say yes, hyphen, when it's not talking about Flint. But this movie really wasn't worth a watch. And, you know, guys, I hate to get political on this, but this was a movie to get me off and talk about movies. Again, like, if I have to give it anything, I'm talking about movies. I know I've promised that a few times, but I just really can't just sit aside and be like, okay, Michael Moore gets passed. No, he doesn't. This is a bad film. Not because he's a liberal. Not because he's hating Trump. This is a bad film because it's a mess. It doesn't know what it wants to be focused on. And when it's not focusing on stuff like Flint that's really interesting, we don't get a lot of documentaries about it anymore. It's just boring and stuff we already know. This just went on way too long and more than I expected it to be. I wouldn't say it's worse than the Happy Time Murders, but again, it's probably the second worst film I saw of 2018. And it's not because of some political viewpoints, it's just because it's a bad film. Don't watch it. Just watch Flint Town, watch the documentary on Donald Trump on Netflix. Watch Bolton for Columbine again. I don't care. Just don't go watch this movie. Don't ever support Michael Moore again because he will stiff film companies. Guys, I deleted my Twitter, just so follow me on Instagram at the Nolan Vogel. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and subscribe to Austin. I'm done. Peace. Sorry for the different angles. I honestly forgot to talk about this because I just thought of it as soon as I was done recording. This really wasn't thought out and in my notes as you saw on my iPhone. But I'm going to compare this movie to Vice really fast. The Dick Cheney biopic. And that it knows it's a movie. It knows its focus. And I know it's silly to compare the two. But this one is not really well... Vice is not well received as much as Fahrenheit 11/9 is. And it pokes fun. Vice, I'm talking about. Pokes fun at both the left and right. Say how ridiculous everything is. And how we're obsessed with politicians. And this just proves its point. I'm sorry I just thought of this just right now. But seriously, go see Vice instead of this movie. Like, because it's actually a good movie. And it's nothing. And it makes you just think. A movie makes you think more than a documentary. Or if you're going to watch something about a politician or an event, watch the Fire Festival documentaries on Hulu and Netflix. Or get your friend's HBO account and watch Obama the Final Years and John McCain from Whom the Bell Tolls. Seriously, don't watch this movie. Alright, I'm finally done, guys. Peace.